When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, new in town. User, XP0NW. Posted, May 12, 1997.
As far as my kids were concerned, moving to Seattle was never a popular decision. My wife Priscilla understood I had no control over the situation, that my job paid the bills and the corporation, in all its wisdom, had decided to transfer me. The PNW branch was bleeding red ink, they said. Someone had to right the ship. Transitioning everyone in my family from the light and heat of Phoenix to the cool gray mists of Seattle-Tacoma was never going to be easy. I knew that. Scylla and I did what we could to prepare, from researching schools to find local analogs of the hobbies our daughters Jennifer and Molly enjoyed. When the big day finally came, we felt reasonably prepared to start our new lives. The intangibles of the situation are what tripped us up. For example, we knew the weather would be grayer here than back home, but no one could have anticipated the windstorm that hit in January. We had hung back in Phoenix to spend Christmas with our families and move the first week of the year. Less than 2 weeks later, the girls watched in horror as the 520 bridge was continually lashed with waves bigger than any they've ever seen. We'd see later on the news that both Lake Washington bridges had been swamped. It was Inauguration Day, and we had been invited to a party at a coworker's place, kind of a themed get-to-know-you thing, but with the bridges out of commission, we'd had to abort the plan. Instead, to try and distract the girls, Priscilla and I thought we'd take them to the Luna Park Cafe, which we'd found on a family walk around the neighborhood the week before. Wouldn't you know it, it was closed too. The storm had busted a skylight, shutting it down for what turned out to be 3 days. The other intangible, one Scylla and I are hoping to keep from the girls, at least for now, is that the house is haunted. I know what you're thinking, and I used to think it too. Hauntings are bullshit. None of it is real. As someone whose job depends on concrete, measurable numbers, I'm sympathetic to anyone who believes the entire world can be boiled down to what we see before us. Thing is, I've now seen enough to know my definition of reality has been way too narrow. First off, I should say that this is real life and not some horror movie, so we haven't been living through Poltergeist or anything like that. It's been more subtle. Unnerving, but subtle. I think I was the first to see anything. Righting the ship has turned out to be a long, agonizing process because some people at the branch benefited from things being broken. Consequently, I've had more late nights at the office than I'd like. On one of those late nights, I came home to a sleeping household. Scylla had left my dinner in the oven, so I took it out, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down on the sofa to watch a little TV while my brain untwisted itself. When I sat down, Letterman had just started. He was partway through his monologue when I saw in the reflection of the screen what looked like someone standing behind me. Thinking Scylla or one of the girls had woken up, I turned around only to see an empty living room. A few minutes later, it happened again, except this time I knew for sure I had seen movement in the glass, and when I spun around, I caught it. A flash of black vanishing around the corner into the rear hallway. I set aside my half-finished dinner and got up to investigate. The hallway was empty. The back door, which was the only place it led, securely locked. It was baffling. In the days to come, I'd see that reflected figure again and again in screens, mirrors, and windows, always fleeting but unequivocally there. Priscilla started to see it as well and brought it up one night before bed. We decided that since it wasn't threatening, we would keep an eye on it and reassess after a few weeks. Jennifer saw something tonight, though, and if she keeps on seeing things, we're going to have to make a move. I was in the kitchen helping Scylla clean up after dinner when Jen came into the room. She wanted to know why her mom had kept walking past the bathroom's open door while she was in there. If she needed to get in, all she had to do was ask. We both couldn't stop the momentary look of confusion from showing on our faces, and Jen looked freaked out. I could see her mentally taking stock of how deep into the dishwashing we were and trying to match up the timeline with what she'd seen. Priscilla, bless her, is much faster on her feet than I am and jumped right into improv mode. She said she had been looking for something and hadn't wanted to distract Jen from curling her hair. It wasn't the best explanation, but something I've learned about the world is that people want to believe. It's easier to accept the unlikely, even ludicrous explanation rather than open yourself up to infinite, terrifying possibilities. I watched our daughter's face show exactly this struggle before accepting the story as given. You could almost see the gears clicking into place before she nodded, satisfied, and walked back into the living room. We dodged a bullet, but this was an escalation. We're currently working out a plan to list the house before the girls catch on that we're not the only ones living here.
Subject: Memories of LA. User: GreenSeg PR. Posted August 13th, 1994.
Most people, when they find out I'm a park ranger working in a part of the state known for heavy winters, want to know what I do for work in the off-season. They're often surprised when I tell them that keeping an eye on the park is a year-round, 3-person operation. Of course, their surprise is nowhere near what it would be if they knew why NPS keeps us there all year. That set of facts is a closely guarded secret known only to a very few people, all of them park veterans. I'm not breaking secrecy for frivolous reasons, but out of genuine concern. You see, for as long as I've been doing the job, the sheer intensity of the weather has kept people away from the park during winter. The last couple years, 97 and 99, haven't been anywhere near as cold as they should be, and that worries me. Moderate weather means more roads are passable. That means tourists, cross-country skiers, snowshoers, and the like, which wouldn't be an issue in any other national park. It wouldn't be an issue because they don't have witch doors. If you don't know what those are, it's because a lot of work has gone into helping you remain ignorant. The park was established around the turn of the century. The first witch door discovered the following winter by a man named Carl Dunlop. History shows the first Forest Reserve Rangers to be Charles Ledig and Archie Leonard over at Yosemite, but Dunlop beat them by 8 years. witch doors are the reason you don't learn Dunlop's name in school. He'd been appointed to his position in summer, and by the time autumn winds began to blow, he built himself a cabin. A typically harsh winter for the region chased everyone away, leaving Dunlop alone in a silent, snow-capped kingdom. Discovery of the door was accidental. He'd been hiking under the canopy of mammoth evergreens in a region which would come to be known as Converse Basin when his compass went wild. Through trial and error, Dunlop was able to trace out the path of the magnetic distortion, which seemed to form a corridor leading north. At the end of that corridor was the first witch door, a vertical rectangle hovering 6 inches off the ground. Dunlop's notes, which formed the basis of the NPS manual on the anomalies, described them as being like black glass, with no frame or visible method of support. His attempt to brush his fingertips across the smooth surface ended abruptly when they passed through it, becoming invisible from the other side. Dunlop jerked his hand back immediately, making him the only person on record to pass through a witch door and come back. Since then, at least 3 rangers and 25 civilians have gone through or are believed to have gone through the black portals, never to be seen again. It's old ranger gossip that his brief immersion in whatever is on the other side of a witch door changed something about Carl, giving him an ability to know things he shouldn't, things far outside what should be normal perception. Only he knows why he chose the name Witch Door, but this seems a likely reason. 2 pieces of evidence support this theory. The first is that by the end of his first winter, he had managed to find a second door and a third, finally mapping out the location of all 33, some of which lay beyond the park boundaries. Those orders were quietly expanded the following year. While you could pass off Dunlop's success at locating what amounts to 33 needles in a vast haystack to pure dedication, his final act is impossible to dismiss. Carl remained living in his cabin until 1941, training at least 4 generations of rangers on managing the doors during winter. This eventually came to include disposal of vehicles and belongings left behind by the few visitors unfortunate enough to make their way to our park during witch door season. He never hurt anyone, to be clear. He didn't have to. Every one of them succumbed to curiosity, stepping through the black glass into the great beyond. Once his health began to decline, he stepped back from day-to-day operations, ceding control to the men he had so carefully trained. Then, one winter morning, a ranger with a question for Dunlop came knocking at the door of his cabin. He was gone, and on the table where he'd taken his meals for more than 50 years was a note. The original copy remains in the park archive, preserved under glass next to a picture of the man. It reads, "I've spent my entire adult life within the confines of this park, and yet I see so much further. The world is about to change in more ways than I can possibly describe. It is no rough beast which slouches its way toward Bethlehem, but a great colossus, its steps gouging furrows into our collective soul. I am too much of the old world to survive the new, and so I choose to leave on my own terms, satisfying my most lingering curiosity. What awaits on the other side of the witch door? I ask that you do not follow me." The note was dated November 6, 1941, the day before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Dunlop was never seen again. Since then, we rangers have continued to work to keep people away from witch doors, but as temperatures climb, that gets more difficult. I don't need Carl's second sight to see that the world is changing. May God have mercy on us all.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.